Banqueting House, Whitehall, London. It's the 30th of January 1649 and King Charles I of England, Scotland and Ireland is about to be executed. After years of fighting with Parliament, the king has been found guilty of treason. Tyrant, traitor, murderer, public enemy. What led to this unprecedented killing of a king? Charles was born in 1600, the second son of King James VI and I of Scotland and England. His elder brother Henry was next in line to the throne. As a child, Charles was often unwell. He had mobility issues and a speech impediment. Charles was well educated and interested in languages and religion. This interest in religion developed against a backdrop of extreme religious tensions between different forms of Christianity, Protestants and Catholics. At 12 years old, Charles's life would change forever. His elder brother Henry died very suddenly. This now meant that Charles was next in line to the throne. In 1625, Charles's father died, meaning that Charles was now the king. A few months later, he married a French Catholic princess, Henrietta Maria. They had 6 surviving children, and by all accounts, Charles was a loving father and a very doting husband. Like his father, Charles believed in the divine right of kings. This was the idea that kings were chosen by God. Charles believed that only a king could make laws and a king didn't need to obey them. To go against the king was a sin. To honour this divine right, Charles ordered a magnificent painting for the ceiling of Banqueting House. The famous artist Rubens created this masterpiece, which shows Charles's father King James looking down on his way up to heaven. However, Charles's time as king did not start well. Firstly, Charles's marriage to Henrietta was controversial. He was Protestant and she was Catholic. The king wanted his kingdom to remain Protestant, but some of the changes that he tried to make to the church too closely resembled that of the Catholic faith. It led to the question, did the Queen have too much power over the king? Secondly, Charles had issues with Parliament. He believed that he'd been chosen by God and did not need Parliament to help him make decisions. Charles dismissed Parliament 3 times in the first 4 years of his reign, and then in 1629 he ruled for a full 11 years on his own. This only ended when he'd run out of money. Charles had no choice but to restart Parliament, and this led straight away to more disagreements. Some people were on the king's side, known as royalists or cavaliers, and some people were on Parliament's side, known as parliamentarians or roundheads. In 1642, these disagreements led to civil war. The bloodiest war ever fought on English soil. An estimated 200,000 people are believed to have died. The Civil War lasted for years, with neighbours and families turning on each other to support opposite sides. The Royalists fought hard, making several early victories, but eventually they were defeated by the parliamentarians. Henrietta and their eldest children had fled abroad and gone into exile. In 1646, Charles was captured and then imprisoned at Hampton Court Palace. Although he did escape, he was eventually recaptured. What should happen to the king now? Not everyone agreed, but eventually the king was put on trial. Charles refused to acknowledge the authority of the court, even refusing to plead guilty or not guilty. Despite this, after 7 days, the judges declared him guilty of treason. He was sentenced to be executed, with his death warrant being signed by 59 people. Charles was given just 3 days to prepare for his execution. During this time, he wrote final letters to his 2 sons living in exile, and he asked if he could say goodbye to his 2 youngest children. Tuesday, 30th of January, 1649. Charles rose early, dressing for the icy weather. He asked for an extra shirt so that he wouldn't shiver. He didn't want people to think that he was shaking with fear. 10 a.m, a knock at the door. Charles walked across the hall at Banqueting House under the same magnificent painting that he'd ordered 20 years before. The masterpiece, celebrating the divine right of kings, shone brightly above him. The king walked out onto the scaffold. A crowd had gathered in the icy weather. The axe was waiting. 2 men, disguised with masks, stood ready to carry out the act. The king, his hair now tied in a white nightcap, took off his cloak and laid down. He told the executioner that he would say a short prayer and that he would give the signal that he was ready. After a little pause, Charles stretched out his arms. The axe fell, severing his head in one clean blow. We still remember Charles's final words today. I go from a corruptible to an incorruptible crown, where no disturbance can be.
No disturbance in the world.